I'm delighted to introduce our day chair. Day chair, Mike Urbanus. His classification is real estate and industrial, but I come to find he is, surprise, a lawyer. But he does not rest on with his JD. He is also a CPA. If I could describe Mike in one word, it would be industrious. In work, volunteering, and play, Mike has an incredible volume of activity that he fits into his 24-hour day. Mike sits on 9 Rotary committees. He's an avid Rotarian for 17 years, connected to the club by his friendships and the good deeds we do. He loves the different backgrounds and political persuasions we all have, and that we come together with great civility and respect for each other. Mike is a huge supporter of his alma mater, St. John's University, which makes him a fitting day chair to introduce Louis Johnston. Mike is a board member of St. John's National Alumni and Advisory Board member of the McNeely Center for Entrepreneurship. In addition to his loves of Rotary and St. John's, Mike is a trustee of the Manitou Fund, treasurer and board member of Sterling Housing, and a member of the investment committee of the Science Museum of Minnesota. With all that volunteerism, you might assume that Mike is retired to fit it all in, although Mike is currently the COO and General Counsel for Space Center Incorporated, an industrial real estate company that owns and manages in excess of 16 million square feet of industrial property. In addition to its real estate holdings, Space Center provides third-party logistics services and operates a venture capital fund focused on emerging technologies. Prior work experience includes United Way of Minneapolis, Arthur Anderson and Company, and the IRS Office of Chief Counsel Tax and Bankruptcy Litigation. Mike's passion is his family and sports. Mike and his wife Roseanne can usually be found biking on the LR Trail, going out to Riley Lake. Where's Riley Lake?
It's by Prairie, not kind of that area.
He also loves golf, travel, camping, St. John's football, Oprah athletics, and the Vikings. That's easy to like this week. His wife Roseanne volunteers as a dog trainer at Helping Paws. Empty nesters, her son Theo is in Berkeley, and a daughter Anna is at CU Boulder. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our industrious Rotarian, committed volunteer, lawyer, and CPA, Mike Urbanus.
Thanks for the kind words. Well, I'm proud to introduce our distinguished speaker today, Dr. Louis Johnston. Louis is the chair of the Department of Economics at the College of St. Benedict and St. John's University. He specializes in macroeconomics and economic history, and some of his recent projects have examined the evolution of Minnesota's economy. In addition to his busy teaching schedule and department chair duties, Louis writes a twice-monthly column on economics for MinPost.com called Macro Micro Minnesota. He's also a special contributor to the macroeconomic sections of the textbook Principles of Economics by Robert Frank and Ben Bernanke. Louis grew up in Deep Haven. He's a Minnesota native. He sold suits at JCPenney in downtown Minneapolis to finance his education through the University of Minnesota. And while at the University of Minnesota, he was influenced by Walter Heller, one of the Department of Economics' most distinguished professors. Louis then went west, and he received his MA and PhD from Cal Berkeley, the #1 public university in the United States. Now, I've always heard that one of the things that inspires scholars at Berkeley to get a Nobel laureate is that they get a parking place on campus, and when you go around campus, it'll say, no parking except for an L, which is Nobel laureate. That's a pretty high bar to get a parking spot. Louis now teaches at my alma mater, St. John's, and over the years, St. John's and St. Ben's have had a number of distinguished faculty in the economics department. A former chair and really a legend at St. John's was Father Martin Sherber. and what John Gallardi is to the football program at St. John's, Father Martin was to the economics department. And speaking of football, today is the eve of the big game. For a lot of Cal guys, the big game is Cal versus Stanford, but to Johnny, it's the Johnny-Tommy game, and the game is tomorrow. And if you want to go to the game, you better leave today, because they expect that there's going to be 14,000 people coming to the game, and I've heard rumors that the governor is going to be there, so it's going to be a great time. Louis and his wife Susan live in St. Cloud. They have 2 children, a senior and a 9th grader. And Louis's talk today is called The Colossal Muddle, Understanding Our Current Economic Woes. Help me in welcoming Louis to the finest podium in Minnesota.
Well, thank you very much for that very, very kind introduction. I bring you greetings from the 2 other Rotary clubs that I've had the honor of addressing in Sartell and the downtown St. Cloud Rotary. They've asked me to send greetings, and so I'm happy to do so. I also want to mention that one of my best students from the last couple of years, Anna Schumacher, just completed an academic year as a Rotary Scholar in India. She studied at the Jawaharlal Nehru Institute in New Delhi and earned a master's degree in economic development. And she is just overwhelmingly grateful for what Rotary has done for her to give that experience to her, and is looking forward to sharing that with anyone who wants to hear about it, because it was truly a transformative experience. So thank you for that. Finally, I'd also mention, you said something about birthdays? It was my birthday this week. What do you get? Nobody forgets my birthday anymore. It's 9/11. I'm 52. Well, so let me get started here. You might wonder why I titled this talk Colossal Muddle. Well, when I started thinking about what I should talk about today, I noticed that in 2 weeks you have Joe Dowling coming to speak to you. So I'm Joe Dowling's warm-up act. And I tried to think of the most Shakespearean economist around. And the most Shakespearean economist around, without a doubt, is John Maynard Keynes. The man was a bon vivant, a lover of champagne, a financial player, a college professor, married the lead ballerina of the Bolshoi Ballet, and had a wicked way with a pen. And in June of 1930, he said the following. And I always tell my students, don't read off the PowerPoint, so I'm going to read off the PowerPoint. He said, "We've involved ourselves in a colossal muddle, having blundered into control of a delicate machine, the working of which we do not understand. The result is that our possibilities of wealth may run to waste for a time, perhaps for a long time." Now, if you think about that, June of 1930, the Great Crash was only in October of 29. Britain had already been in a depression, in a recession, we'd call it today, since late 1928, early 1929. But people in the summer of 1930 were still looking at it as, oh, it's your typical recession, we'll get out of this, it'll be no big deal. And yet Keynes in the summer of 1930 was calling it the Great Slump, which is what has continued to be what it's called in Britain. We have an Anglophile theme today, so they don't call it the Great Depression in Britain, it's the Great Slump. What I want you to take away from today is that I think we are in a colossal muddle right now. I truly believe this. And let me explain why I think that and how we got into it. I'm an economist, and they'll take away my union card if I don't have at least one graph. So here's my graph. I might have another one. This is a graph of real GDP. In plain English, the total amount of stuff that we produce in the economy adjusted for inflation. And I started in 1981 because I graduated from the University of Minnesota in 1983 in what up to that time was the worst recession that had been in the United States since the Great Depression. And I actually have fun with my students arguing, did I graduate in the worst recession, or are you going to graduate in the worst recession? You'll notice two properties of that line. I have kind of an advantage. When I take off my glasses, I can't see anything except the fact that it's going up. But that's a really important thing to know. That's the story of American economic history. Unlike a lot of other nations, if you look at GDP and GDP per person for the United States, except for a few bumps when you put your glasses back on, it's a story of growth. In fact, the United States has never been a poor country. Even when we were colonies, we were one of the richest places on earth. So the story of the United States is one of growth, and it's one of these bumps. You'll see those wrinkles in there. And over on the right-hand side, you'll see the worst wrinkle of all, kind of like a hook. It just goes down and it doesn't come back. Well, there are two ways to interpret this. One way to interpret this is to say, well, that's just the way it is. Now, I don't mean to be quite so flip about that, but if you ask an economist from the University of Minnesota or the University of Chicago or Washington University in St. Louis, they will argue that the economy does what the economy is going to do and that nothing can be done to make things better. So if we see a recession like this, that is optimal. That is the way the economy operates, and any attempt to influence it is just going to make things worse. So when you listen to some analysts, you should understand that's their perspective. Now, I'm not of that school. That school is sometimes jokingly referred to as the freshwater economists, because you're on bodies of fresh water like the Mississippi River, Lake Michigan, and so on. But notice, as Mike said, I went to the University of Minnesota. I was influenced by a lot of people there who take that view, and then I went to Berkeley. And Berkeley's what we call a saltwater school, where they take a different point of view. So I never know what to think, really. But they argue that, and I lean towards this view myself, that the ability of the economy to produce things hasn't stopped improving. And so we can talk about a concept